Hi, HR nerds. This is Nicole Dessain. Welcome to Talent Tales, the show where I interview leaders who have brought design thinking to their talent and HR practices. In today's episode, we have a special guest on the show. I'm joined by Robert Ritchie, who is the head of organizational development at the University of Salford. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nicole.
So, Robert, tell us a little bit, who
Yeah.
are you and what's your story?
So my story. So I head up organisational development in Salford. For those people who don't know Salford, it's very, very close to Manchester. It's literally next door. So hopefully you've heard of that. My story, I started out in financial services, which for me was just like completely not the right environment to be in. And since then, I've worked in a completely whole range of different environments, in retail, in higher education. I've worked in prisons, and one of the things that I really struggled with was the sort of sense of formality and structure, and we've done all of this before type approach to learning and development, organizational development. And that really sort of led me to, I suppose, develop my own brand, which I now realize is human-centered design type work. And for me, it's really, really important that the work I do is not just creative, but is also designed with a real human as the focus. And what I found to be true is a lot of the organizations today, and certainly here in the UK, are not necessarily in that way. And what you end up with is a very, very sort of cardboard, very wooden product, and also culture, which is what I found. So I now head up OD here in Salford, and I'm really, really excited to be having this conversation today, because I do want to share some of the techniques, some of the stories actually that we are proud of by using this new approach really for us.
Awesome. So I'm curious. I wonder if there's something, so you said you worked in the prison system and then, it came to HR. Is there something that helped you, based on that experience, become human-centered? I wonder.
Yeah, I think particularly in the prison service, I found that we were struggling to almost do things that were human-centered, and yet the regime, yet the system almost pushed us away from that, and we became numbers, we became process, and it was very, very hard actually. So I think I did learn a lot from the environments I've been in, and they sort of nudged me towards a more human focus and a sort of real person approach really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you must be a great person to bring this to the world of HR.
I hope so. Yes, it's been a very, it's been a big challenge, and there's been a huge amount of resistance. But I have got a few stories to tell along the way about how I've engaged people, and how when I look over my shoulder now, there's 100 people following me, not just one. So looking forward to explaining some of those.
Great. So I ask everybody this question. What's your creative superpower? Tell us about it.
So mine is, I don't know whether you can see it, is I've put some shapes there. I'm a shapeshifter, unfortunately not physically, otherwise I would love to do that. But I do get myself into a few different shapes in the organization, in terms of difficult situations, interesting situations. And I found for me, that's the real key to getting things, especially new things done in organizations, particularly in a very traditional HR community that loves its process and systems. I find the sort of changing shape and speaking differently and suddenly doing things in an inspiring way really makes a difference here. So for me, that's awesome. I wish I could change my physical shape, but not today.
You're like a superhero. I mean, it goes with the superpower, right? I love that. Yeah. I think that's the first time I heard this one. I really love it. And so you mentioned like a conservative industry. So I've worked in higher ed myself. And so based on my experience, higher ed is not an industry necessarily that comes to mind when it comes to innovation in HR.
No.
I actually remember when I joined as the head of talent strategy, and as a good former consultant, I did some benchmarking. Who does leading practices on higher ed and talent. And I couldn't find any. And finally, I found a study, I think IBM did it, that sort of plotted industries in terms of innovation maturity and talent. And yeah, lo and behold, higher ed was sort of
yeah,
at the bad end of it. So, and I'm like, oh, now I get it. So tell me about, so first of all, what are your thoughts around that? And then secondly, how come you're so innovative at the University of Salford?
Yeah, so I think I'm very lucky. The University of Salford is very entrepreneurial. We are driven by industry collaboration. So we partner with global businesses to provide what we call real world experiences for our students. And that ranges from aeronautical to biochemistry, health, all sorts of disciplines that we offer. We're the fastest growing university in the northwest of England, and we are the 5th in the United Kingdom. So because of that, that gives us energy, gives us drive, and helps sort of create an atmosphere really of entrepreneurship and pace as well. And I'm particularly excited about that because of the work that we now do can support and drive all of that. I am particularly focused on behaviours. We've developed across the organisation 10 core behaviours, or identified 10 behaviours. We call them the Salford behaviours, no surprise. And they are the behaviours that really we notice in the organisation are really making a difference to the people that work with us. And from that, we can do amazing things. What we found when we shine the light on behaviours, it gives permission, freedom for people to be really, really creative and super innovative about the things that they can do. And we've got lots and lots of examples of how that's helping drive leadership capability, middle management development, design, all of the things that we really require to be an innovative, modern university.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I just want to remind everybody to please put in your questions in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. So I really like sort of that entrepreneurial sort of spirit that you describe. And, I wonder, in a way, it seems to me a breeding ground, or can be a breeding ground for design thinking. In an organization. So tell me a little bit about which parts of design thinking have you experimented with?
So I think for me, a lot of the, there's models out there, aren't there? But I think the key areas for us is the empathizing portion, so the connecting with real humans and putting them at the focus and understanding their world. I think it's also defining and being very, very clear about what the people you're working with want out of what you're designing. What's their focus? What's their purpose? What do they want? What have they tried before? So lots and lots and lots of great questions, to get to the answer, really. I think the other thing as well is the prototype stage. So one of our mantras is build the bridge as you walk on it, and we're okay with that, and that's fine. We don't expect the perfect version in the first go, neither do we at the end. Actually, it's a constant refining, and I think that also engenders that behavior of entrepreneurship and being curious and wanting more and more things to happen to the product. I think, for me, the things that really serve us well when we're using design thinking approaches in HR is being absolutely clear on the purpose. What actually are you doing? What's your reason? What's your clear goal? I think the other thing is a bit of disruption. I think by nature I would describe myself as a disruptor, and of course that attracts other disruptors and alternative ways thinking. But I think tons and tons of courage, absolutely loads of courage, not giving up, sort of working with the naysayers, driving and helping them to contribute as well. So for me, those are the things that really, really make a difference and really turn the dial. And also, I think the other thing to get it going is the storytelling aspects of things. We are launching this year that we're in now, a huge range of storytelling options for people. So whether that's Pechakucha style, TED style, cafe conversations, we've got things we've designed ourselves, like academic in a pub, for example, and professor on a bench.
What is that? Tell us a little bit more about academic in the pub.
So one of the things we struggle with is as an organization, particularly with our academic community, is articulating the amazing work that we do to the everyday person on the street or within the rest of the university. So we've designed, we've created these environments. Some of them are literally in pubs, but some of them are in just eateries or cafes where professors, for instance, or somebody that's got a lot to say will have storytelling sessions, and they will talk to people endlessly around research into all sorts of things, from criminology right through to healthcare issues, a whole range of different areas. We've recently just developed and launched an autonomous vehicle. So literally it just drives itself around the campus, and you need to be really aware of where you're going, and you might get run over. So telling those sorts of stories in unusual places, we find really engages people and brings things to life, but it also connects people. And the three sort of words that we use to articulate this is what we call the 3 C's, which is connection, community, and citizenship. And that is what we design and hang our work on. But yeah, it's going pretty well. We've got some good sessions where people have been dropping in. I mentioned the other thing, which was the professor on a bench. So that's literally a bench outside. And we invite people to sit there and hope people come up and talk to them about what they've got to say, but it's a really interesting way of engaging people in probably quite a difficult subject area or quite complex area.
And what has the reception been so far, the impact?
Well, I think in the early days, it was people just sitting there wondering what they were doing, sat on their own in a pub or cafe or on a bench with nobody there. So there's a bit of sort of engineering around all of that. But now we're really, really proud to sort of have this as our everyday type activity. Sure, we need to do more work on frequency, on days, and on wet days sitting outside isn't great, but on the whole it's going okay, and it's very different, and it's also another way we can talk about the university in a more creative way, in a different way than we normally do.
I really love that idea, and I wonder how you might transfer that to other industries or workforces. So I'm thinking maybe like R&D or something, some other workforces that might be perceived as removed. So how might you be able to do something creative like that with some of these other workforces? So I think it already, my brain is already going crazy trying to come up with, how might that apply to other industries?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
I think the other thing when we operate in different environments than our normal office space, different ideas spark. So we have a great campus. We're fortunate we can go outside. We are exploring how we can use the outdoor space for learning and connecting. And we're finding people think, behave, and then produce things in a very, very different way. They also see the passing, people passing by, and they join in. And I think for us, it's around designing environments that are just natural, things which you would normally operate in, to help people learn, grow, make decisions, design new processes, all sorts of different things, really.
I love that, using the environment. And then what came to mind to me is also taking maybe these professionals or these experts out of their environment, like out of the classroom environment, right? Which might be perceived as intimidating, maybe,
Yeah.
right? So, but taking them into a more natural habitat, if you will,
Mm,
they're humans like all
exactly.
of us. So I really
Exactly.
like that notion. Um,
Yeah.
question I always get is, it's great to hear all these stories and how people bring design thinking to HR, but what barriers? We are interested in the barriers, the
Yeah.
lessons learned. What barriers did you encounter in bringing it to
I
your
th-
organization?
yeah, I think there's a couple. I think the first one I faced was, I suppose, the concept that actually you, as the HR person or the expert, you should be telling us, why are you involving us? You should be designing this. I haven't got time. So I think when I started this process, this approach, had lots and lots and lots of coffee conversations, chats, and gradually building on that sort of relationship and connecting people in a different way really, really turned the dial and made a difference, because then it gave us permission and freedom to ask those questions. What are you facing today? What have you tried so far? What are your biggest challenges? What would happen if you did nothing? All those sorts of challenging and interesting questions, and that can then help obviously a design or start the design process. But all along the way, it's, I think, checking in with people. The prototype thing is very, very important, building on that, and being clear that it's an ongoing journey and it's an iterative product. But if it works well now, then that's fine, and that's good. I think the other thing as well, the other barrier is the pace, I think, that organisations work at these days. Our university is, I think, quite unique. It's very fast moving. We've got multiple connected projects going on at any one time, like anywhere. And I think it's the sort of design thinking helps you to, or the approach helps you to, what I call wrap round development, wrap round the everyday busy world, and still get impact. It's not taking people out of their environment for 1, 2, 5, 7 days, but it is understanding and being really empathetic to their environment, while still developing something with them and showing impact. And also, I think the other thing that method shows and results in is a greater sense of engagement and interest, and actually developing an end product that is better than you probably thought of in the beginning, because people have got that freedom, and they're not trapped with the sort of hackles of the desks, and I've got to do it between 2 and 5 days and all this sort of thing. It's very fluid. So I think those two are the barriers for me, really.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the impact that you've seen since you've introduced design thinking into the organization?
I think it's been massive. I think when you sit back and look at the things that you're doing now that you didn't do, they are huge. I think the biggest thing for me is the increased levels of engagement. And what I mean by that is people putting their hands up and saying, I want to get involved, I want to participate, show me how. I was thinking of doing this, can I add this? I was thinking of doing that, how does that work? Connect me with this, please. So I think definitely that. And I think with that has come a greater capacity to be more creative and innovative, with all sorts of areas. So maybe development things, maybe something like recruitment. So I'll give you a very fast example. One of our teams in our library service recruited a head of service. They had no experience in a library and no experience in higher education. And they employed them 2 years ago, and the guy is still here, and he's amazing. He's doing absolutely fantastic work.
Mm-hmm.
That was done through design thinking approaches to recruiting, not our traditional university approach, which, as you would imagine and probably know, takes absolutely ages, ticking box, filling out forms, signing this off, that and the other. So that was a real lived example of where we saw impact, and the proof is the guy is still here and loves it.
That's amazing. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. And just a reminder to everyone, you have a chance to ask Robert any questions that are on your mind by putting them in the chat, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. Yeah, that's an amazing example, I think, and because I often get asked, what's the impact? It's a
Yeah,
qualitative method, and there isn't a lot of research yet around impact
yeah,
in general, but then especially when we use it in
mm,
HR. So I think these
yeah,
very practical sort of applications of it help
yeah, yeah,
others to understand how they might articulate impact
yeah,
inside their organization as they make
yeah,
the business case for it.
yeah,
So I think that's really helpful.
yeah.
So what's your favorite design thinking resource or hack, Robert?
I've got lots. I think as disruptive as possible, but I think the biggest one for me has to be storytelling. Really, really good, powerful, crazy storytelling, things that really engage, connect people. And it's something you can carry around. It's very mobile, it's practical, it's personable. Yeah, for me, that works really, really well. And I think let's not underestimate the power of telling great stories. We think, it's the latest thing, or somebody else does it, or I don't tell a story. We all can tell a great story. And I think that's a real good connector with people, and a good energizer, and also a good technique to show impact on the things that you do. And it gives people that confidence. It gives people that power to carry on going and supporting others in what they're doing as well. So that would be my number one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But as creative and as daring as possible, not bland. Very, very powerful storytelling.
And I love that. And I was sharing with you earlier, I'm going to share that with the group as well, is that it's a muscle you can learn. So for me, as I moved into design thinking, there are things you're naturally better at and some that are naturally maybe not as good at. And I always joke, I'm German, so I'm not a natural storyteller, as my husband always points out. So that's something that I practice and I try to practice. And the way I do that is by, finding maybe these one or two stories, right? And then sort of apply them in various contexts and conversations, and then hone them, refine them, and to your point earlier, hopefully at the end, you maybe have somewhat of a polished story that you can use over and over again, and then you do it with other stories. And at one point, maybe it becomes more and more natural. So to those of you guys, the fellows like me who are not good at storytelling, you can learn it. And it can be rough in the beginning, but it's possible. So in summary, Robert, what tips do you have for those who want to get started using design thinking in the field of HR?
I think for me, the first one is go in with what I call a beginner's mind. So strip back all the, the sort of ideas you have about it's not going to work, it doesn't stack up, I don't know what I'm doing, I need to feel safe and secure in something, and I'll go back to a familiar path, because at that's the exact point that you grow and move into design thinking. And it's a wonderful lens to design different things for the whole organization. I think the second thing is have a very, very clear purpose. Be really sure what you're going to do, and help others to be clear about their purpose as well. I think the third one is inject a bit of disruption. So use different techniques, pace, silence, timing, multimedia, different times of the day, different locations, all of those sorts of things, and things that are in front of you. I think the sort of the other mantra we have here is, the answers are in the room. Sometimes just look around you and you'll find inspiration for different ways of doing things. And I think the final thing I've found to be true is have bags of courage and confidence. Don't give up. The early days for us here were tough, but we've carried on going. We still get pushback, but the general direction of travel in quite a short time, probably just over 12 months, maybe a bit longer, has been significant. And design thinking has been a significant driver, direction of travel that's helped us to achieve amazing things. And also the journey's not over. Just keep going, and be courageous in your decisions, and what comes out of that, really.
So question for you, it might be hard to answer, but how do you maintain courage in the face of adversity?
I think it goes back to my point about being clear about your purpose. I am super clear about the purpose we do across this organization. I mentioned our 3Cs: connection, community, and citizenship. If things don't hang on that, we don't do it. And that for me really drives us through, because then we can tell great stories about why we're doing these things. So why are you doing this outdoor learning thing in a field with whatever? It's because it drives a different connection than what we're doing at the moment. And that's the most important thing for us. So I think it's giving you that oxygen, that space, that permission, by being very, very clear about your purpose and what you're here to do.
Great, thank you. So the last thing I always do is give you a quote and let you react to it. Are you ready?
Okay.
Quote, "What unites people? Stories." Unquote. Tyrion Lannister.
Wow. Well, a very good one. Yeah, I love it. I think it's the glue which brings the world together. Stories, whether it's on the news, whether it's with our families, loved ones, friends, whatever. Stories. Yeah, I love that quote. I've written it down. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Really, really powerful.
It's from and for all the Game of Thrones fans out there that
Yeah.
are not that it's over. So there you go. Stories unite people in the fictional and non-fictional world. So let's move on to questions. So we've got one already in here. Kathy, was that example that you shared around how design thinking impacted your recruiting seemed to resonate. So she asked, can you go into more detail how your recruiting shifted after design thinking?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned to you that we developed this Salford behaviors. So it's 10 behaviors. Some of the examples are things like evolving, learning, daring. So things that you'd expect in a modern organization. So we use these 10 behaviors as language, really, to sculpt our recruitment experience. And it's experience, not process, because what we were strangled with here was process, forms, systems, tick sheets, all of that type of thing. So it's around the experience. And today we don't do it everywhere, but because we're a large organization, but in those sort of more enlightened areas, yes, we have the rigor around what we're looking for in terms of, competence. Can somebody, lecture on geography, history, and Of course that's there. But what we are interested in is how somebody lectures. Are they engaging? Are they bringing out the latest, thinking around that? Are they innovative, etc.? And the behaviors help us give a language to that. So I've designed in partnership with our recruiters, experiences around that. We've designed some small cards, for example, and we ask candidates to pick 3 of the top behaviors that are important to them. We have a discussion around that. We go deeper, and it also gives us permission to go deeper into some of the more I suppose personal things that people hide at interview or think they present in a different way. So it's been incredibly useful to have those tools really to help us delve deeper.
So how do you assess can you explain this a little bit more with the card? Yeah. So how do you assess a candidate then based on the answers they give in response?
Yeah, so we have a grid with the 10 behaviors, and then we literally mark numerically, but also through comments, what we hear, literally what we hear and what we see through the responses. So somebody, for instance, we might ask the question, which would be a game changer for you, which would be something that you would really make a difference here, which would be the one that you must have if you were joining an organization, and then they give an experience, tell us a story about what that is, and then we rate that. So we rate that. But what we do at the end of the interview experience is we focus on that first, not the technical type side of the things, which we also ask, of course. But for us, you shouldn't be at the interview table if you can't do the job, which is the what. We're interested in how and why you're doing this job and why now. So it also throws up some other questions that we can ask in a very natural way, in a very human way, that enables us to get to the nub of the person rather than only looking at the technical detail of it. And then we assess it. We do it systematically. So we have a rigorous way of balancing all of this out. And then we appoint. And it also allows us to when you're interviewing, to share your experiences as well. So, for instance, one of our behaviors is daring. What's daring to you might be quite safe for me, so it's exploring that range of behaviors that that are important when you are in the world of work.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Great example to finish us off here, and especially I like the aspect of that it humanizes what we do in HR.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you. Thank
greetings
you.
to the UK, to Salford, from Chicago, and from everybody here. And thanks everybody for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us for a future Talent Tales podcast. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.